Hello and welcome. Today's exciting episode is about the teal and gold tweed jacket that I feel like I've been beading for just about forever. It's perfect. Perfect jacket. So November 2023 was teal and aqua month. So I had one that was aqua, but most of them were teal and other colours in there as well. And I was planning on doing this one, but I didn't get around to it, which I thought was fine because December was Vlogmas, where you make an episode each day. So I was like, and my theme of the tweeds for that month was metallics. So yeah, but back in November, when I was still hoping I'd have time to do it then, I got out all my beads and I was like, now what ones would go with it? Because I'd always thought of doing something, because to me, if you have gold, like an antique gold color and teal, then it kind of looks Egyptian, ancient Egyptian, not, just in that sort of Cleopatra movies kind of way. I know that sounds a bit, but so I sort of thought I'd go with gold and teal, and so I went with the sort of ancient Egyptian theme. So there was corn, and I couldn't find any cats beads, but I found these dog ones. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll make sphinxes, instead of two cats looking at each other. Maybe I'll do two dogs looking at each other. So I have a few sets of those as well. And then there were just all these sort of ancient they look like artifacts. So I got them all out and sort of spread them all out. So some of them look more Egyptian and some of them look more Western or British, if you know what I mean. And then there were some flowers, so I used them on the dragonfly jacket, and obviously the dragonflies as well. So yeah, at this point in November, I just sort of divided them all up, and I was like, okay, these ones will look really good with an Egyptian type theme, and then some other ones will look good with, so I mean the corn, it sort of looks like maize, and there are a couple of actual corn ones as well. And then the seashells, like in ancient civilizations, before there were coins, they used shells as currency. So I kept them in as well. And then with the teal, I had some that look sort of aqua teal and some that are sort of more of a steel grey, and then some transparent glass like abacus beads, as well as these bead clusters. So the bead clusters, or the bug looking ones, it's just a whole bunch of seed beads, and you put down one or two beads and then you bead over the top of them. And yeah, originally I was going to do a beaded trim around it, but now at this point I was like, no, I'm going to embellish the entire jacket, which means beading onto the actual tweed rather than making a separate trim that looks kind of like a ribbon that you would then stitch on, but it's beads and sequins. And so I set aside all these and I was like, okay, I'll use these ones. And at this point, I sort of went with mostly small ones, because what I love about the tweed is the big, thick, goldish ribbons and olive ribbons. So I was going to just the edges of it, like the ribbons in the tweed are sort of held down with thinner bits of wool. And I was like, okay, I'll do all the gold beading and teal beading over the wool. So, and leave most of the ribbons, thick gold ribbons free. But then, I sort of changed my mind when I saw it. I was like, actually, no. So anyway, then I think the next point was, and then I decided I just wanted to randomly add champagne and some brown in there as well. So I hadn't actually made it at this point, but I'd added the champagne, and then I was like, okay, ready to make it now. But then I ended up making some of the other Christmas ones first, like the gingerbread jacket And yeah, so this is, I actually ended up using this. So when you make a tweed jacket, you have to have a structural layer as well. And so I think these ones I ended up making the gingerbread jacket out of. That's that sort of brownish one and white underneath the Egyptian tweed. So yeah, and then I ended up using the champagne and some of the gold beads on the gingerbread jacket. So yeah, and so I just got out my Egyptian tweed bead mix and I took out all these ones here that you can see that I've taken out. So yeah, originally they were going to be on the Egyptian tweed, but I ended up using them on this. It doesn't really look like a gingerbread jacket anymore, but the reason I got them out and used them on that one was because they sort of look like, you know, when you burn cooked sugar in it, you sort of burn it lightly, it looks like toffee, and then you use it to glue the various sheets of gingerbread together. So yeah, I used all these ones, and it's supposed to look like blobs of white icing and things like that. Anyway, so as I said, I was originally with the Egyptian tweed just going to do the beading on the edges so that you could see the ribbon and not obstruct it at all. So see how with this one the beads are just in thin lines? Well, in the dragonfly jacket that I just showed you before, this one in front, I put them on the ribbons, so to speak, rather than on the bits around the edges of the big thick ribbons. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear. Anyway, I really, really love the way the gingerbread jacket turned out. I mean, I like the way this one turned out too, but it doesn't have any thick ribbons in it, whereas the gingerbread jacket does. And so I decided with the, while I was finishing this, I was like, actually, I like it having a big bead in the middle of the square. I really like that. So on this one, as well as the dragonfly jacket, and from the year before the Edinburgh jacket, I was like, yeah, I really like the way you have one big bead in the middle of the square. So also it sort of protects the ribbons to pin it down with a bead in the middle of the ribbon bit, rather than just putting all the beads over the bits of wool, like the dark red or brown colour and the teal, like covering them up almost completely with beads. It would just look so different if I'd done that. So yeah. Anyway, now that I'd finished the gingerbread jacket and I was about to start this one, I was like, oh, I have to add more beads. So I added some more steel blue and some more teal ones, plus some more gold ones. And then I was like, okay, it's finally time to make the jacket. So as I said, I actually had used up the black netting, so I ended up using the pink netting, just because when you're making a video you kind of have to use a color that can be seen. So, and that's all I happen to have. So here's the jacket. I made that back in November. I'll put a card up here and you can click to the actual making of the jacket if you want to see that video. I only had 1 yard of the fabric, which is why the right sleeve is a perfect pattern match, whereas the left sleeve is slightly off. Like I would have had to have bought about 1/4 yard more if I wanted enough to have a perfect match, but it's just a little bit, it's sort of like 2 or 3 ribbons down from what would have been a perfect match. So that is a little bit annoying, but once it's fully beaded, you won't really be able to see. So yeah. And at this point I was like, actually, I thought of peacock feathers. And I was like, actually, maybe I should add some green in there. Spoiler alert, I don't. But I do really like the idea of peacock feathers. So I think, I don't know, maybe on that other gold Marc Jacobs jacket that I have, maybe I'll make peacock feather coloured ones on that. Anyway, so here we go. So I started, and I don't know how, but I just sort of fell into this rhythm of doing one a sequin stack, then the next one a bead, then a sequin stack, then a bead. And I just sort of fell into it. And it was not my intention at all, but it's beautiful. And it's actually, I think it would have been really a little bit too heavy if I hadn't have done that, because a sequin stack is a large flat sequin, then a tiny seed bead, then a small to medium sized flower shaped sequin, then one more seed bead. So it's actually a lot lighter than a big glass bead. So I think if I'd done glass bead, glass bead, glass bead, glass bead, it would have actually been all over the entire jacket. It would have been quite heavy, whereas every second one being a stack, it's basically half the weight. So it was good in that once it's all finished, it's going to be quite a reasonable weight. It's going to be a weight, but it's not going to be like super heavy. And these are the flower beads that I have. So they're sort of I don't know how to describe this color. It's almost a rose gold on one side, and then the other side is a sort of antique-ish gold, but sort of with olive sort of tinges if you sort of move it a certain way. And then the big sequin on the bottom is a yellow gold, like a true gold. So I think they play off each other really well. I think if you'd done two that were the same color, then you wouldn't see either of them. But because there's a slight contrast in the colors, it really gives it more texture and depth. And because you're only doing one every second ribbon, I just feel like it works really well. And it wasn't planned. It just sort of, I fell into it and I was like, actually, this is really cool. And then I think as I said, in December, I was having an episode a day. So this was when I made the teal dress out of all the teal pre-cuts. I bought all these fat quarters at the Black Friday sale in November. And there's like one dress is teal, one dress is green, one is sort of rose and wine coloured. So yeah, this was the teal one. And I just put the jacket on because also teal in there. But I also wanted to see what it looked like on, and I love it, but I did feel like it was a little bit too light. Not heavy enough. There's a certain weight that you hit when you're doing beading and you're like, this is it. This is absolutely it. It's hard to like quantify just by saying, because each bead, like whether you depending on the size of the bead, depending on whether it's steel or like a metallic bead or a glass bead or a hollow plastic bead or a solid plastic bead, each type of bead is completely different weight, and depending on the density of the beading as well. So it's really hard to say, oh, this amount of beading will make the jacket be the perfect weight. So you sort of have to wait until you've done a bit of beading. So at that point I was like, I don't think this is heavy enough, but I'll do a little bit more beading before I decide for sure. So then I was working from the bottom of the jacket, just because this is a really, really fragile tweed. It's basically just a bunch of ribbon vaguely held together with wool, bits of wool. And so it's, you can't really see, but it's stitched down a lot. There's a lot of hand stitching on here to make sure it wouldn't fray and it would all stay where it is and it would age well. Because I make jackets that I want to wear for decades and decades. Like I started making my own jackets 15 years ago, and I'll add another jacket to the collection, but I just keep wearing all of them. So they've got to age well. So these tweeds that are made from, like the wool ones are pretty robust because they're originally designed to be worn like as a suit at least one, to Sunday, at least once a week for decades on end. So those ones are pretty good. But something like this that's made out of ribbons and the occasional bit of wool in there, they're really quite delicate. So you have to take a lot of time to stitch them down onto a backing fabric and then I love the beading, but partly I do the beading as a protective layer over the top too, so that nothing will ever brush against the tweed, because there's this little layer of armor over the top. It's very decorative armor, but it's armor as well. So yeah, there was that in there as well. But anyway, so this is just to show you what that actual reminder of what it looked like. So it's built up pretty well. It's protected. I'm doing the beading, so I really got into a rhythm with the beading here, and I quite like it. That's just me pointing out the glass pineapple. And so I turned up the hem, and I was like, yeah. And this is just as I said, in December I was making an episode a day, so I just stopped to make that jacket and that dress, and I had this jacket on this other mannequin, and I do like it pinned up, but it just felt like there wasn't quite enough weight at the bottom of the jacket. And I guess at this point I made that other jacket as well, the one that's inspired by vintage knits. I cannot wait to bead this one. There's going to be like oatmeal and sort of cream coloured beads on the cream line, and then there's going to be green beads on the green line, and there's going to be magenta purpley beads on the magenta purple line. It's going to be so cool. Anyway, back to the Egyptian gold jacket. I just felt like overall there would not be enough weight at the bottom. There's just a way that I like jackets to hang, and once there's just enough weight, then it hugs the curves of your body just perfectly, and it just feels like it's the most precise fitting jacket in the world, and I absolutely love it. So I tend to I keep adding beads until I get to whatever that weight is. Like, I don't even have any scales, but you can just tell what the weight is when you're doing it. So what I did was I added, I think first I just added 2 extra rows of beads. And then I ended up adding a 3rd row. So I had to scrounge around my beads, and I got out all the gold ones, and I got out some slightly larger, you can see here, there's quite a lot of solid glass beads, which they're much heavier than standard ones, and they're just gorgeous. Like, some of you asked me where I get my beads from, and I have just been, anytime I go to a different city, there's always a bead shop. Every city, every town always has like a specialty bead store. I don't know why, but I think it's completely awesome. And I always buy like 1 or 2 different interesting things. And most bead stores have a special section or a clearance section. So sometimes I buy some from there as well. And sequins as well. I am just antique sequins or vintage sequins that were made in Europe. They are hand-punched sequin from Italy or Paris. Oh, they are just awesome. If you ever see those, you have to buy them. They are the best. Anyway, so yeah, I just buy all different sorts of beads, all different sorts of sequins. And then, at the moment, I'm just, during this pandemic, I was like, I have to stop buying stuff. So I think I bought this tweed in 2020 after I survived COVID. I was like, okay, I have to reward myself. That was terrible because I had long COVID, and I was feeling sorry for myself basically. So I bought this tweed off Etsy, and it took 4 months to arrive. And then, it took me 4 years to actually get around to making it. So, and why was I telling you that story? Oh, anyway, so I added 3 rows of extra beads around the bottom, and I really, really like it. Then I hand stitch the hem up, which is good because it sort of protects the tweed. Once the hem is stitched up, then it just protects it so much more. And I'm really, really happy with it. Oh, this is an extra bit of footage I shot where I'm like, see, these are the 3 rows that I added. And yeah. So I'd done all the other ones first and then I added this weight. And I don't think you could have done it all at once. You need the weight of the one sequin stack, one bead, one sequin stack, one bead. You need all that weight put down first and then go back and put the second heavier layer of weight on the top. If you've ever done oil painting, when I was a kid, like my finals, I had art class as one of my things, and yeah, what you do is you put down a thin layer of paint when you're doing oil paints, and then you layer up the thick layers over the top. And I kind of approach beading the same way. I put down a thin layer that tells you sort of it's like the blueprint of where everything else is going to go. And then I sort of layer it on and layer it on. And when you're doing beading, because I care about how my jacket is going to age over decades, you just sort of have to think about what the threads are going to be like. So you want them to nestle as well as they can with the back of the tweed so that they don't age too quickly, because if you stitch things down wrongly, then it's the back of the threads that's going to age badly. And then obviously at this point I was up to doing it's a weird, I don't know how to describe this dress. Like there's dark red in there, and then there's anyway, I just used up all the quilting squares in that dress as well. And then I got back to this jacket, and so you just have to, well, in my opinion, you just have to be really careful and really thoughtful about how you stitch your beads on. I get a lot of people looking at me and my beading, and I've been doing beading since I was a little kid, but for the last 15 years I've been working on tweed jackets. So it's a very, very specific type of beading. And during that time, my skill level has improved, obviously. But I've also been wearing my jackets and I've been watching how they age, and I've had to repair them. So I know which points are the stress points on a jacket, and I know what I have to do to make a jacket age well. So I get people asking me how can I do that? And I'm like, well, you can spend 15 years making stuff and wearing it. I think if you're just starting out, I would just get a denim jacket from a thrift store or your closet and bead around the collar or bead around the front of it, and then just wear it. And how do you wash it? Do you dry clean? If you only ever throw things in a washing machine, then that's going to limit the kind of designs that you can do. Whereas if you are really, really careful with your, mine are obviously dry clean only with very, very specialist dry cleaners, which is expensive. So what you can do to combat that and decrease your dry cleaning costs is that once you wear it, then you hang it up for 2 or 3 days and just let it air out naturally. And then always wear a jacket, always wear layers underneath. And that way the layers underneath are the ones you wash. Whereas the outer jacket, and obviously never wear perfume. You have to choose between beads and perfume. You cannot have both. And no products in my hair. I don't wear makeup. I don't smoke. I don't go. If I'm going to have to go to a meeting in a place where there's going to be smoke, then I'll wear a different jacket. I've got a black Chanel jacket that's, I bought from a Chanel boutique, and I'll wear that jacket, and that can be dry cleaned at a much cheaper rate than one of these that would obviously cost an absolute fortune to dry clean. So yeah, I get a lot of questions about how can I make something like that? I've got a couple of hours on the weekend. Well, what do you think? Do you think it's possible to make something like I have been making, doing beading and hand sewing for all my life? And it took me 3 months to make this. So if you think you can make it in 2 hours, you go, girl. But, and how do you wash something like this cheaply? I just don't see how you do, and I don't see why you would want to. Oh, this is the Chanel Edinburgh jacket that I was telling you about that I made back in 2022. And I went through all my bead collection and sort of cherry picked some of the really, really beautiful beads. And because I love the way this one turned out, and because I love the way this one turned out so much, then that's why today I have the Dragonfly jacket, the Gucci teal and red one, and now this one and the gingerbread one. So yeah, this is more recently. So I think that's the end of the previous footage. So now we're up to Desperately Seeking Susan month, and obviously I made the gold jacket, and like this one was inspired by the earrings that she wears in Desperately Seeking Susan. She has those big, very, very bling Egyptian earrings, or well, this is kind of more Byzantine, but yeah, if you've seen the Chanel Paris Bombay collection from like a decade ago, kind of, yeah, very inspired by that collection to make that jacket. So yeah, once I'd done that, I was like, okay, it's finally time to finish the beading on this. So I started doing the sleeves, and well, I started doing one sleeve, but then I sort of had to stop and do some other things. But you can see I've done the shoulder of up here, and I've also done some more down at the cuff. And I just found it really, really difficult to get back into the rhythm of this beading because it is such a complex type of beading. It's actually 2 different types of beading in one. So you've got the sequence stack style beading, and when you do that, you sort of have to hold the jacket a certain way so that you can hold the stack in place while you thread them all on the needle, hold them in place, then pin them down. And then there's the other, like every second bead was just a big heavy bead. And when you're stitching on a bigger, heavier bead, you sort of have to hold the jacket in a different way so that you can get the tension on your thread right. So it's just constantly swapping between 2 different ways. Oh yeah, and I made a couple of floral jackets along the way as well. But yeah, this one, you're just constantly swapping between 2 different techniques. And because you're using different techniques, you have to hold the jacket a different way. And I just found this really exhausting. Like the sleeves are more difficult because like you don't have much room to move inside them, whereas when doing the torso of the jacket, it's kind of a bit easier. So I have done the whole of the right sleeve, which I'm showing you now, and I'm really impressed with it. It was so difficult to do. Oh my goodness, I can't describe how difficult it was. I think because I'm still doing an episode a day, so I had to stop and start a lot, and I just found it so frustrating. Back in December, I'd pre-recorded a couple of fabric hauls and a couple of informational videos, like there was one on Chanel and things like that. So now I'm just showing you because I have done more work on the left sleeve, but I'm not completely finished. So I had to stop at this point. I was like, I still have to edit all of this video and I have to do the voiceover. So I'll put a little bit of a footage on, tack it on at the end. But yeah, at this point I had to stop, and I was like, I got the footage down to a certain amount. So I'd done a certain amount of editing, but I still had all the final edit to do, and I had the final voiceover to do as well. And I was like, okay, I have to stop. I'm not going to be able to finish it, unfortunately. I will show you in an episode or two. Once I have finished it, I'll show you the absolute final jacket. But I feel like you get a really good idea here because one full sleeve is done and then I've started the second sleeve. And I am just so proud of the work in this jacket. You cannot believe how difficult it was. It's just so impressive to me that the amounts of, the technique, how, like, the improvement in my technique, even since I started this jacket to actually completing it, it's just ridiculous. I don't think I would have started it. Some people, I don't think I would have started this if I'd known how much work it was. I just can't believe the incredible amounts of work. And these sleeves are just so difficult to do, even though I went with a jacket pattern that actually has quite a lot of ease in the sleeves and they're relatively baggy compared to, say, the Vogue 7975. But, and I'm really happy, like over the chest, you'll see that there's lots of big gold, old gold or true gold, yellow gold beads over the chest area. And those ones are lighter and bigger because they're metal filigree. So they're punched metal that's got holes in it. So they're a bit lighter. And I put them over the chest so there's no heavy beads over the chest. Because as much as I love heavy beading, if you have heavy beading over the chest, then after a few hours of wearing the jacket, or if you're wearing it for a full 8-hour day or 10-hour day, then you sort of feel like it's squishing you on your bust, and I don't like that feeling at all. So, and I was concerned about it with this particular jacket just because some of those glass beads are quite heavy. So I ended up putting those metal ones that do not weigh much at all, but they're quite impressive size-wise. I put them over the top and I really like the way that it turned out. So you can tell now by this footage how dark it was outside, and I'm using artificial light. So I've got like the center third of the sleeve or a little bit more, probably the middle half is still yet to bead. And the reason that sleeves are harder is like, how do you tie off your thread and securely tie on the new one? It's like you can't get into the back. The cuffs are kind of okay. The shoulders are kind of okay because you can turn it in and go from the torso side. But when you get to the middle of the sleeve, oh goodness, it is frustrating. So I think once I've done both sleeves, I strongly suspect I will add that extra 3 layers of beads around the bottom, the same way I did around the torso, the hem, and then turn up the cuffs. But it is just so impressive to me that I haven't completed it yet, but goodness, this has used up so many beads, so many sequins, and just the massive investment of time. I'm really happy with the way that it's turning out. So that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my absolute labour of love with this jacket. The episode is only half an hour long, which is quite impressive. I just had so many clips of this jacket because I love the tweed. As soon as I bought the tweed, I was like, oh, I love this tweed. So for the longest of literally years, I was like, I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to mess it up. I'll save it. And then, at the end of last year, I was like, I have got to use this. I just want to wear this so much and I want to work on it because, I do want to really, really want to wear every jacket that I make, but I swear I think my favorite part is the actual beading of it. And then if I've really enjoyed beading a jacket, then it becomes one of my favorites. And whether it's practical or not, it will just become one of my, most worn everyday jackets. And once you start wearing jackets like this, though, you learn how to wear something really expensive. And like, obviously, once you've repaired it a few times, you're like, I am going to be extremely careful when I wear this. So yeah, it's fine wearing it as an everyday piece in my opinion, because I know that I'm the one who is going to have to do any repair if there's any damage ever done to it. So it makes me super careful, like respectful of the piece as I wear it. So yes. Anyway, and obviously I still have to add the lining as well. So I'll probably film that, because you have to hand stitch the lining in once all the beading is done. But yeah, I have to finish the beading first. Okay, so that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. It has been a bit of a long one, but oh my gosh, not as long as it took me to bead this jacket. Thanks again, and happy sewing.